to bring your attention, excuse me, to what is really happening in the world. First of all, I want to say our absence from the tube. I'll say that much. It was not our fault, and as I told you always, excuse me, as I told you always, when we are absent, it is not our fault. When we're absent from these platforms, it is not our fault. We are the only show that got banned from our platform, and then we got banned from our backup platform while we were live on the air. It's documented. So every time we make noise, every time we make a move, every time we pick up subscribers, those subscribers are wiped away. They're unsubscribed. The show is suspended for no. They just make up reasons for the show. So for the show to be suspended. So we have to talk to you, and we have to spend a lot of time informing the people of why the videos stop being put up, why the live shows stop happening, and it is a concerted effort by multiple platforms to keep the show off the air, because it is no coincidence that when we got suspended off this platform, we also got suspended off our backup platform live on the air, and then we were banned from Facebook and other platforms within 24 hours. That is no coincidence. And the guests we've had on the show have often said that this is the show that everybody should watch. This is the show that everybody should pay attention to, because we give you an in-depth analysis on what's really happening, and we try to inform the people about the realness in the news, because most platforms, whether they be mainstream or alternative, so-called alternative media, give you their perspective, but their perspectives are often lacking in depth. Okay, so we want to go into the news thing, and we want you to be able to understand the breadth and the depths of what is going on today. What we're seeing today is the collapse of a world, an entire world order. Make no mistake about this. The American-led Western world order is not only in decline and is not close to collapse. The collapse is underway, and all of the signs point towards it. Right, economically, politically, socially, and militarily, or what we say geopolitically. We see that every day is hitting us right in our face, in our faces. Okay, I want to first address something about what's in the news today, because I saw something about a black um, college professor commented on the British Queen Elizabeth's death, and not Elon Musk, but the Amazon owner, Bezos, or whatever you want to call him, Jeff Bezos, um, chewed her out, and she got a lot of backlash about what she said about uh, Elizabeth in England. But what she said about Elizabeth in England was the truth. I mean, I'm not afraid to call out black people. I'm not afraid to call out white people. I'm not afraid to call out anybody. And I will tell you what is going on, regardless of all of the hurt butts in the audience or whatever. Let's get a perspective, because right now, I don't care what media you look in, whether it's alternative or whether it's alternative or whether it's I would say mainstream media. All of them are giving you this thing that Elizabeth was this benevolent, enlightened, futuristic leader who led Britain in a time of darkness, and who uh, bestowed uh, her majesty on the world and gave a gift to the world. I want you to understand that under Elizabeth, remember, she ruled for 70 years, I believe, 72, 73 years, something like that. Um, I believe she became queen when she was 22 or 23, something of that sort. This was roughly the turn of the 20th century, a little bit after the turn of the 20th century. And there were brutal oppressions across Africa under her rule. Let's not whitewash this, because if this were the Jewish people, and it happened to them, they would make it known that it happened to them. If it was anybody else that it happened to, they would make it known that it happened to them. So we have to call an ace a ace and a spade a spade. She listen, she was queen and she ruled the policies of England, even though the prime minister gets um the credit, but all of the policies go through the queen. So when Britain, Belgium, and the United States and other NATO countries killed Patrice Lumumba, she had a hand in it. She didn't have a clean hand. When they overthrew countries in Africa that were fighting and striving for independence, that was under her rule too. As they massacred thousands, tens of thousands of people to maintain Western colonialism and empowerment over an entire people of over 1 billion people on the continent. That was under her rule too. It just didn't happen before her rule. It continued underneath her rule. And today they continue to maintain sway under the rule, under different titles as the British Commonwealth or the French Commonwealth. These are titles that they put together to try to keep their sway, their economic and political clout over countries that they once occupied, they once committed atrocities in, they once committed war crimes and crimes against humanity. So they lump these people in together, they destabilize these countries so that they can siphon off the resources, because Europe is a resource poor continent. So without the raw resources of Africa, Europe would not exist as a wealthy continent, because they cannot be wealthy if they have little to no resources. These are things that should be pointed out. Okay, I have to address this issue and I have to hit this head on. She was not so benevolent and nice and all of this stuff. What about all the racist comments that came from Windsor's Palace, Buckingham Palace? All the devious things that were done under British rule. We have a short memory when it comes to Africa and the heinous crimes that the West commits and committed against that. But we want to talk about Ukraine, right? Which is an in-house fight of Europeans, where the East is fighting to maintain the eastern part of Europe is fighting to maintain its sway over its former Soviet republics, and the West is trying to dominate by ripping that from Russia, so that they can weaken Russia, so that they can maintain their global hegemony. So in reality, that's an in-house fight. And what kills me is this. See, you've heard me talk about the sins of other people, but I have to also bring up the sins of Europeans. Now, I know this will get a lot of people butt hurt. I know that, but it is what it is. Okay. Now, um, in the height of the military operation of Russia, they even let the cat out the bag when they say we can sympathize with these people. They are they are white with blonde hair and blue eyes. This is what they said about the situation that was going on in Ukraine. They say these are civilized people. Listen, I want you to see the arrogance in this, okay? Because we overlook this stuff because it might offend some channels or some people or some organizations that we might want to affiliate with. I don't care what nothing about that, man. Listen, I don't care anything about that. I'm going to tell it like it is. You can take it or you can leave it. It really doesn't matter to me. Okay. Whether I have one listener or viewer, or whether I have 100 million listeners or viewers, I'm going to tell it like it is. Now, I want you to see the arrogance in this. They said these are civilized nations, in essence, calling non-European countries or nations uncivilized. Isn't that amazing? And nothing was done, nothing was said. All they did was keep those reporters who openly confess what is a hidden secret on the air. All they did was push them out the limelight until the small brush fire fizzled out. The small political brush fire fizzled out. They said this is not like in the Middle East or in Africa. We can sympathize with these. They're like us. They look like us. This is what was said. I'm Google this stuff. If you don't Google it, go to YouTube and put it in a YouTube search engine. and it'll come up. These are opinions that are of the masses, right? And to show you the double standard, all right? I want to show you the double standard in this because this has a lot to do with the domestic policies of the nations like America and like some of these alternative media sites. You know, we look at that and we analyze that, right? And then we look at a double standard. We'll see protests going on over the murder of a person in a certain city or whatever from in an urban area. And they're protests. And then they have uh, evidence showing that bricks were being uh, trucked in from some unknown people who had hoodies on and who broke into stores and then started handing out stuff. But the pictures in the media takes the picture of the black and the brown and the red and the yellow people coming out of the buildings, right? This has been widely omitted in the media and the alternative media. And then when the rage comes out of the people when over a brutal death, an unjustified and unwarranted death from an urban community, and then there's an uprising, but they call it rioting, right? They call it rioting when it's in the urban community. These are like the little phrases they use. Um, it's no longer a uprising; it's a riot. That's a negative connotation. This is what they do. A negative connotation to this. So that every time you associate the people's anger to the situation, you can dismiss the anger and the situation because rioting in itself is a unjustified rebellion against authority. Okay? So they use this slang. And I'm going to show you just how all of this fits in. So you hear the mainstream media and you hear the alternative media lashing out, or they're looting, they're burning, they're doing this, they're doing that. And then as soon as you have the January 6th, as they call it, protests or uprising, see the difference? The uprising, the protest, because these were mainly non-black, brown, yellow, and red people. And they were in the Capitol. Listen to me good. I don't care if you are conservative or liberal or whatever, but they were in the Capitol and they ransacked the Capitol, okay? With intentions also to hurt or even to kill some elected officials, as was being reported. There's no doubt that there may be arguments over the intent of the people, but there is no doubt that they did go into the building. They bum rush these institutions and they occupy them. There's no dispute on that, right? Regardless of what you say that they were let in or whatever, there's no dispute that they were occupying these facilities. Okay, now knowing that, every alternative media, when they return alternative media site or every alternative media platform, when they talk about this, they say the Jan 6 event or the Jan 6 protest. But that wasn't a protest, that was a riot. That was a riot because they jumped up to overturn, and I have no dealings with the political aspect of that part. We could talk about that later, but I'm getting to a point here. They went into government institutions. They held people captive. They stole government property like laptops and all of this stuff. That was done. There's no disputing that. Okay. But the alternative media justifies it. And it becomes a Jan 6 movement, a protest, not a riot. Because the riot has a negative connotation. They label uprisings in urban areas as riots. And there's no justification for them destroying property. There's no justification for that. According to all of the writings that come out during and after this, they're pillaging, they're robbing. What does this have to do with the death of such and such and such and such? And yet, and still, you have a major government institution that was ransacked, pillaged, looted, occupied, and people held captive, with some with the intent of being killed or kidnapped. And that is a protest. That is an uprising. That is justifiable according to most alternative media. Do you see? This is what I'm saying. So this is how they whitewash the crimes that's done by Britain under Elizabeth. Britain committed heinous crimes under Elizabeth, and she was fine with that because it maintained British importance, British influence, and British rule. They were occupying nations. Hell, Zimbabwe didn't get their independence from Britain till, I believe, the 80s, the 70s or the 80s. And I do believe that Elizabeth was the queen then. But they dismiss this because they don't even realize that they look at non-white life less than theirs. How in the hell can you cry and mourn for Ukraine, yet you can honor Elizabeth because she had a blood-filled reign? This is the truth. I'm not embellishing this stuff. I'm not making this stuff up. Go look in the history books. It's written. But it's whitewashed in the media. Why is that? You need to ask the question, why is it? And why do they whitewash the rioting in the government institutions in January 6th? Yeah, they were mad because they say the election was this. And I won't say what they say the election was because YouTube will use that to ban me again, even though it's not my opinion. Okay? I'm a straight shooter. Anybody that has dealt with me and who deals with me know that I call it straight up. I don't care if it offends you. If truth offends you, then that's on you. That's not on me. That's not on me. I don't care if you black, white, purple, brown, pink, yellow, green, or red. If truth offends you, that has nothing to do with me. That's something that you got to deal with, okay? So, excuse me, my head is a little crooked because I was trying to break it in. It's a newer hat. But listen, ask yourself, why is that? Why on this matter of importance is the mainstream media and the alternative media lock in step? Anything else that they're disagreeing about? But the Jan 6, like they disagree over Jan 6, right? But they're in lock and step over Elizabeth. And they whitewash the crimes because remember that the military of Britain, the military of Australia, the military of New Zealand, and the military of these Commonwealth states, they swear an oath and allegiance to Elizabeth, right? And to honor and defend the crown at all costs. So listen, if the nation committed atrocities, they did it under her knowing and her benefiting from that. How in the hell can she become the largest landowner in the world and didn't purchase nothing? Owning land on every continent. That came through colonialism. And we're going to overlook that because she died. Hell, there's people that die every day and don't get this benefit, who have done nothing but try to do right, and they don't get this benefit. Elizabeth benefited from the massacres in Africa. Elizabeth benefited from the political turmoil and chaos in South and Central America. Elizabeth benefited from the opium wars in Asia, and the war in Afghanistan, and the wars in the Middle East. When did she denounce that? When did she tell her prime minister, don't do that? When did she tell the army? Because the army would listen to her over the prime minister. She has that, what is the royal prerogative, where she can overrule any government under her rule. It's called the royal prerogative. So if she was so for human rights, why in the hell did she stand up for the rights of the humans that were being massacred under British colonial rule? Under her rule. The hell with Elizabeth. That's the way I look at it. because you want to call Saddam Hussein a tyrant who was made a tyrant by Britain and America. You disconnect that. You say Osama bin Laden or Islamists. That's what you call them. You want everything negative connotation towards Islam. But yet you ignore that Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Christian U.S. government were the ones who armed, trained, and financed him and gave him all kinds of bank accounts to commit whatever you say he committed. But that would make him a Christian terrorist and not an Islamic terrorist. Is that not right? Because we say America is a Christian nation, right? We can't disconnect this stuff. We have to call it like, and if you say that he didn't do it, I have proof that he did under America's tutelage. ISIS, the Al Qaeda and ISIS, right? I've had multiple guests who has inside information. And as a matter of fact, I had Scott Bennett. That was why we got banned off the air for a while on this platform, who was a former U.S. intelligence. I think he was over the terror unit or whatever. And he said that Al Qaeda. I asked him. I straight up asked him about this, and he corrected me. He said, "No, Al Qaeda is a product of the United States," and he had records and everything. He knew it because he knew about their bank accounts and how the U.S. was funneling money back in. It's the same way they were talking about they were fighting Al Qaeda, the same way they're doing with ISIS, and we have indisputable evidence that America has been flying ISIS leaders and ISIS fighters in and out of Syria, in and out of Iraq, into Afghanistan, in and out of Afghanistan, into the former Soviet republics, in and out of into Ukraine. We have indisputable evidence that this is what she's doing, and she's gonna tell you that she's fighting them and call them extreme Islamists. Well, if you pull the levers tool and you control them and you fund them and you give them political cover and economic backing, then, and you call yourself a Christian nation, then that's Christian fundamentalism. That's Christian terrorism, right? I'm asking because these are questions we never ask. These are things we never sit down and we just take what they say, hook, line, and sinker. This is what gets me banned off the app. Think about that. When have you ever seen a person get banned off one platform, stream on his backup platform, and in the midst of streaming with a guest on the show, get banned off that platform in the middle of streaming on the air? That doesn't happen, but it happened here because we tell the truth. And we don't care if you're conservative, liberal, black, or white. We're going to give it to you raw, and it's up to you to take it or leave it. So as we talk about these things with Elizabeth, in the heinous and brutal crimes that were committed and that are still being committed right now. When we talk about America and they're stealing oil from Syria, guess who's over there too? Britain. When we're talking about America and Iraq, and America refusing to leave Iraq after there were 2 congressional votes, not 1, 2 congressional votes that voted America out of Iraq. America they just pushed it to the side. Now this is a nation that claims to be about sovereignty, right? How dare Russia damage Ukrainian territorial integrity? And yet they say nothing about France violating 6 African nations' airspace, ignoring the presidential mandates of these countries, telling France to stop. And then France going into these nations, massacring people, and then claiming that they were fighting terror to hide their dirty hand of killing innocent people down there. Not a peep in the media, not even in the alternative media. Why is that? Because they look at African or Black lives less than their own. That is the only rational conclusion that you can come to, because this is a thing, this is not 1 in a million. This is something that is continually being repeated over and over and over again. Think about what's going on in the Asian Pacific. It's not just America. Britain is involved in that. The provoking of China, the provoking of Russia, That's why they trying to establish Asian NATO. That's why they have AUKUS in the Quad. I do believe that Britain is a part of AUKUS and Britain is a part of the Quad. This was put together while Elizabeth was queen. I'm not making this up. And you want me to believe that she's a benevolent man? Get the hell out of here with that. You know, I mean, seriously, you cannot let these people do what they've done, and get away with it. And the double standards, even when it comes to my platform. When I tell you this, I'll tell you something, and then you'll see it on other platforms that are not that don't look like me, and they'll have 100,000 subscribers, right? Why is that? Huh? Why? Ask yourself, why is that? This is what I'm saying. And every time I get 100 subscribers, they take 99 of them. I mean, we have it documented. And I've been threatened with total suspension and bans from this place. Now, why my son did something for me, I'm gonna see if it works. I'm gonna put it up on, and I see my boy Jeremy in the audience. What's up, Freeze? What's up, man? Salute, God. Um, let me I gotta pull up something real quick. Get on the screen. My son was showing me. You know, I tell all of the people, when it comes to technology, I am your huckleberry. I don't know anything about this. You know, I'm here. My son points out what to do sometimes, and then I try to do it. Okay. But he put something up. And he told me, I'm seeing if it's gonna work. Uh, he told me to. Okay, let me add this to the screen. Hold on. All right. It's supposed to show our platforms. Let's see. There we are. There we are. Our other platforms. Please don't hesitate to subscribe, because we don't know how long they'll allow us on YouTube. Um, Check this out, and I want to explain something to you to show you how they're messing with the channel because of the truth that we give out. I told you that we were suspended for a show that never even aired on YouTube. This was a show on our Patreon, and the tube went into our accounts and looked at the video over there and suspended us over here. And then after that, they suspended me for a video that was done at the first beginning of the year, which is with Jim Fetzer, the founder of 911 Scholars for 911 Truth, and former Marines intelligence officer. They suspended my show for that took place at the beginning of the year. And while I was on the platform, they suspended me. Now, I want to share something with you. When we made bones about this, right? When we got mad about this, um, they unsuspended me from the other platform without even informing me that I got unsuspended. They took away the strike from that platform, and I didn't even know it, right? And then I got the strike back without even being on the air. I'm telling you, this is real. This stuff is real. Now, we can see these platforms are in bed with um the governments, the Western governments. We can see that because now they touchy feely, they're sensitive. They're sensitive to anything that might challenge their perspective or their view. They're very sensitive about this. And any person that stands on truth doesn't care if you challenge it. I don't care if you try to cheat me on what I'm saying, because I know what I'm saying is the truth. And I'm well able to defend what I'm saying with facts, not just opinions, but with facts, because I can point it out to you. Right? So, knowing that we're trying to diversify, we're on Twitch, we're on Odyssey, we're on Twitter, we're on Rumble, we're on Locals, we're on Patreon. On the Odyssey, go sign up. Odyssey is like a platform like this, like what I'm on right now. I didn't know anything about it, and my son, he hooked it up or whatever. Go to we're on Locals. but you go to empowerment of truth. That is the community, the empowerment of truth community, empowermentoftruth.locals.com. And then on there you have the Red Pill Diaries, and then you can start your platform, or you can chime in, you can be a part of that. I'm learning how this stuff goes. We just set it up, okay? So again, I had that so that, and I'm going to start informing people of this stuff as long as we're on this platform, because they, as I said, I don't get a fair shake, and I don't expect a fair shake. How can you get a fair shake with an unjust society, a fallen society? Going back to what I said, we are watching the collapse of an entire world, economically, politically, socially, militarily. Everything. If you don't think that America is imploding in all of these spheres where she once exercised unrivaled dominance, let us look at the situation for a minute. 20 years ago, the dollar was without question unrivaled, right? 20 years ago. They had no alternative, no rival, no nothing. They could not even foresee it. For 25 years ago, they couldn't see it in the future, because it had been so dominant and had been the world reserve currency and was accepted in nations before their own currency was accepted. Is that the case today? No. You see nations unifying together like the BRICS nations and the global South, right? And they are working in unison to rid themselves of the dollar. Now, this has a devastating effect on American foreign policy, because America uses the dollar to spy in on other people's policies in their own country, because every dollar transaction is traced. America uses the SWIFT system to trace and see what every nation is doing. That's how she keeps account of what these nations are doing, through the SWIFT network. And whenever you make America mad, or whenever you step outside of her her authority and her power, she sanctions you, right? Or she manipulates the dollar on the international market, and it fluctuates, right? And it causes inflation in certain areas of the world. And this inflation may eat away at the price of that currency of that nation, or may cause bread prices, or may cause wheat prices to spike to a level that the average person cannot afford in that land. And then they, you know what happens after that? Protests occur, right? And then America shoots in her team of color revolution people, and then they overthrow the government. This is how she manipulates. She uses the dollar to manipulate world policy and world opinion and world events. And nations are sick of it. So nations are moving outside of the dollar, outside of it. So you have Russia, the largest exporter of oil and gas and natural resources, now using the ruble and the yuan for trade, or the won, it's called the yuan, or the renminbi. That's what it's called. You see them actively moving outside of dollar domination. As a matter of fact, Russia has just come out a few days ago and said that now all commodities coming out of Russia, all those things that America needs from Russia, buck oil, sunflower oil, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, the ores, all of those commodities will be sold in a basket of currency in a 50% ruble and a 50% Chinese yuan. As a matter of fact, the Russian government is now issuing yuans or renminbis, bonds, to finance the government. They're now issuing that. The Bank of China gave them the permission to go ahead and issue Chinese bonds to fund the government. Huh? You didn't hear this in the news. You don't see this. All you hear is propaganda in the news, propaganda on social media sites, propaganda on the so-called alternative media sites. They give you this much truth mixed with this much opinion and this much madness. So you walk out with a bag full of nothingness. because you can't wrap your head around all that is going on. What we're seeing is a devolution, not an evolution, but a devolution of the post-World War II order. Or we're looking at the collapse of the 1914 world order. We're looking at that. We're looking at the collapse of the Bretton Woods Agreement because people are tired of her meddling in their business. They're tired of, oh, do as I say and not as I do. I want you to think about the arrogance of this. See, people don't raise these questions with you. People don't talk to you like this because they don't respect your mental capacity, your mental composition, your makeup. They don't respect that. I talk to you as if I'm talking to somebody sitting next to me, and I raise issues with you to stimulate thought, to make you think. I don't want you to be lazy. You've been lazy for so long. That's why these people have been able to get over on you. That's why they continue to get over on you, because you are lazy people and you don't want to think for yourself. So what I do, I raise issues that force you to think. And then, you know what, when I raise them, you have to say to yourself, I never thought about that. You know what? That's right. That's pretty much right. You have to say stuff like that. Now, when we look at the situation with America, these nations are mad. I want you to think about the hypocrisy in this, okay? America says that Russia has no right to a sphere of influence. Russia goes over to help Venezuela, and then America says, look, this is our area of influence. We control the Western Hemisphere. No military bases, blah, 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 and this and this. But you got hundreds of them in the East. You see the arrogance? Just look at that. She goes over in the Persian Gulf and deploys her warships off the coast, threatening these nations like Iran. And then when Iran sends her warships and America think that they're headed to Venezuela to give Venezuela some military aid, we advise the Iranians not to do that. That is a high provocation, and we may use military might. And the average person does not even sit down and say, why does America do that? Why does she think that she is the exception to the rule? This is what I'm saying. This is something that is ingrained in Western society. They believe that they can kill and rob and steal, lie and cheat and deceive, and that nothing of bad consequences will come back. That is arrogance. That's exceptionalism. That you mean that everybody else got to pay a price for what they do, but you don't? You're telling me that you can go and break up families, destroy nations, break up governments, overthrow them, steal resources, and that's okay because you did it. But if I have a disagreement that you provoked with my neighbor, and I know that it's a national security threat, and I have to act militarily, then I get sanctioned? Then I get threatened? And I get provoked more? And I'm supposed to submit to that? Come on. Common sense. And if this is done on a daily basis, right? If this is done on a daily basis, people will get fed up. And that's what you're seeing. The world is fed up with this mess. They're fed up with her. So America was once able to export inflation around the world because she had the world reserve currency. But now you see the ASEAN, that's ASEAN, global grouping, which is the largest trading bloc on the planet Earth, not the European Union, but the ASEAN, which comprises Asian nations and China. And guess what the currency of choice is used in the trading bloc? The Chinese renminbi, or the yuan. Now, guess what? I'm gonna blow your mind with something else. Now we look at the second largest trading bloc on Earth. Do you believe that's the European Union? Nope. Well, who is it? It's the African Union, the second largest trading bloc on planet Earth. And a lot of those nations are preferring to do business in yuan, renminbi. And that's why America has taken these terror groups like ISIS and turned them into Boko Haram and flooded these nations with terror and instability so that she can justify her, France, Britain, Canada, and all of the former colonial nations to put military assets in these nations, claiming to fight terror. But in actuality, she's pushing terror to destabilize these. And I want to point out something too that you probably miss. These nations that she's flooding with terror, these happen to be strategic nations that are heavily invested in Chinese renminbi trade, or China is heavily invested in infrastructure and manufacturing trade with them. That is no coincidence. That is no coincidence. That is two birds with one stone. America gets to destabilize a nation that is, well, three birds. America gets to destabilize a nation that is reaching for independence, that used to be an economic colony of the West. They get to destabilize and push the yuan back from challenging the dollar. Plus, they get to destabilize and hurt the Chinese economy that has overtaken America in purchasing power parity. 3 in 1. Right? All under the guise of fighting terror. Terror, I might add, if you trace it back, goes back to Al Qaeda, which means the database. What database? The database of the US CIA. It was Zbigniew Brzezinski, Barack Obama's mentor, who created Al Qaeda. It was Barack Obama's mentor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who put forth these plans for America to try to dominate Africa and the Eurasian continent so that she can remain without rival, and she can put her military on every strategic waterway and trade path, so that she can hold a gun to the brains of the world and say, if you don't accept the dollar, not only will we destabilize all of these trade routes, but we'll cause instability and war. This is not me. Go get Brzezinski's book, Zbigniew Brzezinski's books. Go read them. This is what he pushed. And who is Brzezinski? He was a native Polish person, right, who migrated to America and became the national security advisor of President Jimmy Carter. Do you know that's a powerful position? This man is the national security advisor, meaning that he advised the presidents on all issues of security for America. So with these thoughts and these desires, he influenced an already arrogant and bloated empire to continue her moves. Now, let me get to something. Let me say something to you, because time is limited, and I have to tell you a few things about the hypocrisy of America, and the hypocrisy of Britain, and the hypocrisy of the European Union. Right? They have screamed and they've made the world know that of their disapproval of Russia's position in Ukraine, even though Russia tried to avoid this, even though Russia offered them a deal, even though America kept infringing on Russia's security space, even though America continued to ignore Russia's national security needs and continue to expand NATO up to Russia's borders. Now listen, it wasn't Russia that expanded to NATO's border. It was NATO that expanded to Russia's border. Now, if you got two juggernauts that live in two different neighborhoods, every now and then they might run into each other and might sell out to each other and like they say on the streets, sell a couple wolf tickets to each other. But when that bully in this neighborhood moves over to that neighborhood right next door to the other bully, sooner or later they're gonna face off, right? Because one is bad and the other is bad. And the one that's bad that expanded gonna want to just take completely over. But the other one that's standing there is not gonna just allow that to happen. This is what you see. These are kids, their mentality, they're children mentally. The political leadership, they're children. This is middle school thinking. I'm going to dominate at all costs. I'm going to rule. I'm going to do this. You got to do what I say. And if you don't do, I'm going to take my ball and go home. That's children. That's a childish way of thinking. And then they put on all these programs and all these TV shows talking about anger, manage your anger, do this and do that. And if you get angry and you confront somebody, you have a chance of going to jail. America gets angry. She socks somebody in the mouth by going to war, assassinating somebody, overthrowing them, sanctioning them, right? All of that is acts of war. All of that, according to the UN Charter, all of those things are acts of war and illegal. But America thinks that she's the exception to the rule. See, this is what I'm saying to you all. How long can you think that go on? How long can you think that can go on without being checked? Because sooner or later you're going to rub some people the wrong way, and they're going to call your bluff and say, you know what? You might be a bigger military than me. You might have this over me, but as they say in the street, you got to give me this fade because you just violated everything. You got to give me this fade. Win, lose, or draw, you got to give it to me. So now you see other nations, big and small, military powers challenging America, right? Why? Because she's reached that point. She has transgressed and she has broken the bounds of all international norms and limits. Think about it. She says Iran is over in the Middle East causing terror and destabilizing nations. Yet she ignores Iraq's demand for her to leave their country. Voted twice by the Iraqi parliament and approved by the Iraqi prime minister and the Iraqi presidents. And when she got pissed, and pardon my language, but this is real. When she gets pissed at them for voting that, you know what she does? She empties a couple bases in the southern part of Iraq. Then she goes up there with the Kurds and put illegally occupying bases in the north of Iraq. And gives more finance and cover to the Kurds to do what they're doing, siphoning off oil, selling it to Israel. This is what goes on behind the scenes. And then she ignores the sovereignty of Syria. Every day, almost literally, she goes into Syria and she steals convoys full of oil out of the Syrian fields. She went over there and one of the first things she did, she moved towards the Syrian oil fields. Talking about she was fighting terror. She's going to protect the oil fields. The hell you doing over in Syria? You don't have no United Nations mandate. You don't have no invitation by the Syrian government. That's theft. On every level, that is theft. That is international piracy. And not one peep, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, CBS, Fox News, this is the norm. They just accept this as might equals right. But if America gets offended, and look, and you know how we talked about the double standards. We need to secure our borders. These migrants they're just coming across the border. Okay, well, how are you so worried about them coming through the borders of land that you took from them? Now, I just want to add that to you. You're concerned about that, which you, as a government, you should be concerned about an influx of illegal people coming across your borders. But why don't you utter a word about you being an illegal people and an illegal entity that goes across the Iraqis' borders, or the Syrian borders, or that you're an illegal presence in North Africa? When the nations have asked you, Canada, France, Germany, Britain, and all of the former colonial nations to leave. Huh? Man, I'm telling you this. You don't hear that on these so-called alternative media channels because they have an interest in the status quo too. They don't want the status quo to be turned. They believe that Trump is some type of savior. They believe that Trump can truly turn, and that Trump is truly fighting against the system. This is the crazy thing right here. I had a discussion with the other co-founder of the Scholars for 911 Truth, Kevin Barrett. As a matter of fact, he and we stay in contact with each other, and he's been on the show several times. Highly respected professor and lecturer and podcaster and international personality. He and I were talking, and I'm pretty sure it's on one of some of it is on one of my interviews with him. But he and I were talking, and he was talking about Trump, and he gives you a a chronological listing of how Trump came to acquire his wealth. He gives you a chronological listing of who Trump rubs elbows with. And a lot of them are in the same circle as Biden and the rest of them. Now, if you benefited from the system and you are a beneficiary of the policies of the system, and these policies that you benefit from made you a billionaire and keeps you a billionaire, do you actually believe that that person will really challenge the status quo? Do you think that that person will really institute revolution for change? Because if change comes, change could wipe away his privilege. So do you actually believe that, or is he a Manchurian candidate like Obama was? Huh? I'm asking. I'm asking you because these are, if you go to these alternative media sites, Trump this and they don't want Trump to run for president. And yeah, some people don't want him to run for president. Biden, abject failure. You know, I'm apolitical when it comes to this. I don't care which one I'm getting in office because both of them two different sides of the same coin. Because if you don't believe what I'm saying, and if Biden is not one part of the same coin as Trump, then why has he continued Trump policies? Huh? If you think I'm lying, go look it up. He has continued along the same political lines as Trump. But these people who benefited from the system, they long for change for the system, but they want to change in a way that they still benefit and others are still excluded from it. And Trump offers I would say, a mirage of that. Trump offers a mirage. You know what a mirage is, right? If you're in the desert and you hallucinate, and the visions that you have are visions of grandeur, and you want this and you want that, and you're seeing that. And it looks like it's right over that hill there until you get to the hill, right? Some people say, well, at least Trump didn't start a war. The hell you say? Trump didn't start a war. Then what was killing the second most powerful person in Iran was? Huh? Because things are not settled. He covertly invited the second most powerful person who was supposed to become the Ayatollah of Iran. I'm talking about General Soleimani to Iran. He invited him and a top colonel of the Iranian military with the top resistance general to have a conference to try to meet to tackle this terrorism problem in Iraq. Soleimani flew there, and as soon as he got there, they killed him. If that's not an act of war, then what are you talking about? See how they dismiss lives of people that are not like them? You see that? The madness in these people. Trump didn't start a war. What the hell you mean he didn't start a war? he helped continue the wars. What's that called in the courtroom? Aiding and abetting, isn't it? If somebody breaks into that building over there and you with that person and you continue along the same pathway as that person and you didn't break in that building, but you with them and you go in there with them and you help them handle the same merchandise that they had, and that person gets caught and you get caught. Yeah, the person is charged, but you are charged too as an accessory. But there's a detachment from reality with these people, with the American populace. There's a detachment from reality with the Western world. And they don't like the mirror to be held up to the hell. If I did all the stuff that they did, I wouldn't like the mirror to be held up to me either. To constantly loot and pillage nations. to overthrow governments that you're not in agreement with. Think about this. They tried to assassinate it, the duly elected president of Venezuela. And guess what? They did it under Trump too. They tried to kill him with a drone strike. You know what that brings to mind? When they did the same thing when they kidnapped Hugo Chavez, the former president, may he rest in peace, of Venezuela. And to the people in Venezuela rose up and they demanded him to be returned without one hair on his head being harmed, or else they would destroy every American interest in the region. Guess what America did? Brought him back to power. So when they went to Haiti and kidnapped under when Hillary Clinton they went to Haiti, they had a team to kidnap John Aristide, who was the most popular Haitian figure in roughly a century. Because he told, most of y'all don't know that Haiti is a dope, I can say, stop off for the Western world. Britain, America, France, Germany, all of those nations right there, they get a lot of the opium and a lot of the cocaine and stuff. And that's the transport from east to west over here. And the stop off point is Haiti. And Aristide wanted to stop that. But that's how the CIA and these black operations are funded, through opium, pushing opium and dope. So the CIA didn't want to have that. The French intelligence didn't want to have that. The MI5 and the MI6 of the British people didn't want to have that. These other European nations, they wanted a piece of the pie. And this angered them. And then there was a survey done on the waterways around Haiti, and they found huge amounts of untapped oil and gas there. And then they did a study over Haiti, and they found that Haiti has a huge untapped mineral resources. And Aristide wanted to give that, the Western companies wanted to come in, and he welcomed them, but he said he was going to have Chinese companies and others coming in. And he said that, and he wanted the majority of the wealth to go back to the Haitian people. Oh, no, that's not in America, Britain, France, and the Western world's interest. That was too much for them. They kidnapped that man. They would not return him to Haiti until they forced him to sign an agreement that he would not re-enter politics for over 20 years. And that's why you see Haiti the mess that she is right now. Also, Haiti is still trying to recoup from the losses that she suffered in the so-called world court against France. But I tell you what, these people they are crazy as hell, and their policies are coming back to bite them. France sued Haiti for rebelling against slavery and for rebelling against colonial occupation by France. And they won because they say they lost billions in rubber processing. Hey, listen, I want you to understand what just happened, what I just said. France won a lawsuit in so-called international court against the Haitian people for their rebellion against being slaves and producing rubber that helped France become a power, and producing rum and all of this stuff. France sued because they said they lost billions of dollars from that because the people wanted to be free. And Haiti is still under that burden of debt, and they're still paying it to this day. So when you look at Haiti, you look at the whole picture of Haiti. Don't look at the situation that you see right now. Look at it with America's hand in it, and Britain's hand in it, and the European nations' hands, because that's the truth. I'm not making this stuff up. But this gets ignored, right? Like when they look at the inner city of America and they see that some inner cities are drug infested and there's violence all over the place. They put it on the back of the people in the environment. And then I say to the people, I say, okay, yeah, they have some responsibility, but what can you do with the people who have been robbed of opportunity constantly, who are hunted down in their own communities, and through TV and media, they are made to dislike themselves. So when they see each other, They don't look at each other. They don't look at each other with a brotherly love. They look at each other the way that the TV and the media presents them. And then you have to go to the heart of the matter and say, okay, they say there's a gun epidemic, epidemic of violence in urban America, code word for black and brown communities. And then you say, well, if there's a gun epidemic, let us go to the root cause. Are there any black gun manufacturers or brown gun manufacturers in America? And then you look and you say, no. Okay. So since there's no black or brown gun manufacturers in America, then how is the inner city flooded with guns and there's an epidemic? Well, are there freight companies, huge freight companies owned by black and brown people? No, there's minors, freight companies, but not huge. Well, then how are the guns being manufactured and by whom are they being manufactured and how are they being transported and flooded into their community? And for what purpose are they coming there? Hmm? And then you say, well, there's a drug epidemic. Okay. The cocaine you say comes from South America. Then you have to say, in the urban community, are there urban border guards controlling America's borders? Nope. Does the urban city or urban America control satellites? Nope. Does urban America own trains and train stations? Nope. Does urban America own ships and shipping ports? Nope. So if the drugs are being flooded in urban America and they have to come across customs in the border, then there must be a concerted effort to get them into the urban community since there's no ownership of border or ships or trains or planes in that community. I mean, this is only, see, we bypass all that, miss me with all that foolishness. Let's go straight to the root of the matter. So there's a concerted effort, and these things are overlooked, and all the responsibility is put on the person who is going through the turmoil. That's just like the raper always talking about the victim and said, well, if they wouldn't have did that, I wouldn't have raped them. You know, the madness of this policy. And no one ever gets to the get down of this. Nobody ever sits down because you know what? Common sense is not so common anymore. And people, it hurts people to put that gray matter to work because you become so inundated with technology to do stuff. When I was growing up and you had a school report, you had to go to the library. You had to actually do leg work. You couldn't sit at a computer all day and pull up everything at your fingertips. You had to go down to the library and you had to know how to use the card catalog. And you had to walk down those aisles to find each book. And then you had to check these books out. And if you couldn't check certain books out, you had to sit there until you wrote down enough of the information that you could take home and use with the other books that you could check out. Right? Now things are at the tip of the finger and people are lazy. Look at the microwave. I call it the microwave age because everybody wants something hot and fast right now. They don't want to put in the work for it. And that goes a lot to our mentality. We don't think through the fog. We just let the fog clog our brains up and we go wherever we see the smoke or the light through the fog. And even though it might be a dull light, you go there because you want some sort of light. When you have a light beam on yourself, and if you just put it to work, you can see through the fog. This is true. So, with that said, and we addressed a lot of policy issues with America and the hypocrisy of the Western world. And by the way, I want to add, when we talk about the occupation of Africa, we're not just talking about America and Britain. All of the colonial powers, Germany and Belgium, all of them are back in Africa. You know that, right? Under some title, whether they're talking about a UN mandate or whether they're talking about a peace fighting force or whether they're talking about fighting terror, all of them are back there, including Canada, including Germany, including Australia. They have military bases in the Horn of Africa. And then you want to tell me that we're past race. We're past racism, man. If you don't get out of here, man, how many African bases are in Europe? How many South American bases are in Europe? How many Asian bases are in Europe? You feel that you can do this to other people, but people can't do it to you. So somebody got to show you to your face. And I'm that one. I'll tell it to you. I don't care. Because sometimes you got to look at yourself and do a reappraisal. You got to look at yourself. You know how sometimes you know this person that's always pointing the finger at everybody else? And, I went to this job. First, the job is good. The next thing you know, oh, they won't do this. Oh, they doing this. Oh, they're doing this over here. Then they go to the next one. Oh, that person over there, such and such. And they're always disgruntled. And it's always somebody else. But then you've been around that person and you know that that person is not peachy clean. So you're saying to yourself, now I wonder if this person knows that they may lie at the root of their own problems. This is the Western world. The blowback effect is tremendous because you've been able to exploit resources from Latin America, and you've been able to exploit resources from Africa. You've been able to exploit resources from Asia. That's coming to an end because there's an ulterior world that is being formed outside of the confines of colonial and Eurocentric thinking. And this is what's driving them mad. This is why they made a statement a few days ago and says, Russia is not our long-term threat. China is the greatest security threat to America in the West. Why? Why is China? China didn't invade Europe. China's not over there invading Latin America. China's not even invading Africa. They're offering an African hand with economics and building up infrastructure. So why is why is China a long-term threat? First of all, economically, it has outperformed all of Europe and the United States combined. And by the way, China is Europe's largest trading partner too, and largest financier too, just like it is with America. So that's one. Two, China's yuan. They see it as a threat to dollar hegemony. All right. China's Belt and Road Initiative, which means to spread out across the globe and offer opportunity of wealth and success to nations around the globe without being stationary and focused on China itself. This is something that the West cannot see because America believes that she's the exceptional nation and the Western world believes that everything should run through them. And why is China viewed as a long-term national threat and international threat to America and Europe? Because she is a non-white nation that is rising militarily, economically, and politically. That is why. I'll call the ace and the spade a spade. Russia has the largest nuclear stockpile in the world, the largest nuclear arsenal in the world. And America continues to provoke Russia, but America sees China as the greatest threat. Now you make that make sense. You make that make sense. China's not fighting Ukraine. China's not trying to occupy Europe. China is focused on what China wants, and that is to offer global trade so that it's a win-win situation for the nations that's involved. So why is China a threat? We have to look, see, you have to go to the root of this stuff. They always dance around this stuff because they don't want to acknowledge these things. But I'm gonna tell it to you, whether you black or white, brown, red, yellow, purple, green, pink, or orange. China is a long-term security threat because it is a non-white or non-Western nation. And it is growing militarily, it is growing economically, and it is growing politically. You can't sanction China and get away with it. When 93 to 97% of your goods on your shelves come from China, when almost all of your military uniforms and motherboards to your computers and chips come from China, almost all your drone components come from China, right? You owe China $1 trillion+ for financing your government. China is your largest trade partner, your largest investor. So How can you sanction the nation? And they're doing this. Listen to me good. This is me cutting off my nose and my ears in spite of my face. This is what America's doing. Sanctioning the chip industry, even though China now is self-sufficient in chips, because they feel that China has gotten a leg up. So now you're cutting off opportunities for your tech industry because China has almost 1.5 billion people. So now that is a market that you can't tap because you're mad that they're tapping yours. So you are 380 million people, 360, 380 million people, and you want to just keep the 1.5 billion roughly from advancing. So what you're doing, you're cutting off your ears and your nose in spite of your face. The madness in their policies. I'm telling you, look at the policies. The policies and the actions of America in the West says it all. You are going to sanction the nation that holds $1.2 trillion in your debt. You're going to sanction the nation that produces 93 to 97% of all goods on your shelves in your stores. You're going to sanction the nation that is your largest investor and largest financer. Now tell me how that'll work out for you. I just want you to put yourself in those shoes and look at it from that perspective and tell me how you think that'll work out for you. But because of the arrogance and they feel that America must lead the world, you hear them say, America must lead the world. Why? Because your leadership has proven to be inept, unjust, irrational, emotional, and unsound and unstable. So where's your justification that you must rule the world? Why can't another person rule the world, or why can't other people jointly coexist and push policy around the world? Because you feel that you're better than everybody. That's why. That's why. You feel that you have the inherent right to do this. Just say it like it is. Just say it how it is. And stop beating around the bush. I hate people that do that. And people can't take me because I'm a straightforward person. I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. I'm going to tell you how it is. It's up to you to accept it or reject it. You know, and that's how it is. But in reality, China has surpassed America. I want you to think about this. In a 44-year span, China was one of the poorest nations on the planet. It is now, according to the metrics used by the CIA and the metrics used by the IMF and the World Bank, China is now the largest economic power in the world, by far, outstripping America by roughly, what is it, $8 trillion or $9 trillion in purchasing power parity. And it's only, and this year, it's even more. And every year, they're seeing that China is outstripping America. So these things are playing in the back of their mind. So they came out with a policy. And I got the inside on this from a few people who know that, and I did a premium article on this months ago. I think it was about in January or February. I did this. And the report came out, a Pentagon report, and I think it was a CIA report, if I'm not mistaken. They said that America is losing her position as the dominant power in the world. She's losing her influence, and she's also losing time. And she has between a 12 and 18-month period to try to stem or stop the rise of China. After that 12 to 16 months, no, it's 12 to 18 months, 12 to 18 months period, that there will be no hope that America could turn the tide back. Now, that was in January that I wrote this, but the report came out at the end of last year. So she's losing time. So that's why you see all the military provocations. That's why you see all the sanctions and the economic and technological provocations by closing off markets to China. All of that has to do with America insane thinking that she has to rule, that she has to have the advantage over everybody. And and listen, and she always accuses other people of the things that she does. She always transpose what, like if she's guilty of something, she'll put it on you. She clears her conscience by putting it on you. And that's what she's doing with China. She's trying to wage an economic war with a power that she can't win an economic war with. And let me give you an example. If you own a house, right? Let's just do it like this. Capital One. Let's just use Capital One for an example, because not only do they give you credit cards, they give you personal loans, they give you home loans, they give you car loans. Let's use this for an example. Say that you, for the last 40 years, you have been getting a home loan, car loan, all of your car loans, your personal loans, and all of your credit card loans from Capital One, right? And now you're no longer able to make those payments, right? How do you think waging an economic war with Capital One would be for you? Huh? When your stability and livelihood depends on Capital One. You owe Capital One. Your family lives in a house that is practically leased to you, because you don't really own it till you pay off the last bill. But you, it's in Capital One's hands to keep you in that house, your family in that house. It's in Capital One's hands to feed you and your family using the credit cards or the personal loans or the car loans or whatever. And you now want to wage war with Capital One. How do you think that you would fare? I'm asking you because we got to use common sense today. How do you think you would fare in such a war with Capital One, and such an economic war? And Capital One has an arsenal of lawyers, right? And you want to go to war with Capital One, and yet you're indebted. How do you think that economic and legal war would play out? Well, America is in the same position economically, and instead of legally, she's in the same position militarily. She has war gamed for the last few years. She war gamed 18 war games, and this year she's done 2. And in each war game, America's losses got progressively worse each time she war gamed fighting China. And even when she war gamed China, and she did not lose badly, but she lost nonetheless, with her allies in hand. Listen to me good. With the whole might of NATO, I might add. The only reason America didn't lose as bad as she lost in the other war games is because America put in there future weapons that she might have in 20 years. But she lost nonetheless, even with the future weapons. So again, how do you think an economic and military war would play out with China? China is no longer just the largest land army. She's the largest economic power. She's the largest lender. She's the largest banker. She's the largest manufacturer. She's the largest importer. She's the largest exporter. She now has the largest Navy for the last 2 years. And within 1 to 2 years, she'll have the largest Air Force. How do you think that will work out for America? I'm asking you. Huh? A dose of reality. Because when you hear the so-called pundits, they get paid to direct your attention to these rosy scenarios where America is still the dominant power. But she's not. She's not. And this is why she is so enraged. And you say, well, what about Britain? The UK is tied to the hip with the US. As America goes, so goes the UK. As the dollar goes, so goes the British pound. That's why in every escapade that America goes on around the world, waging illegal, unjust, and immoral wars, the UK is tied shoulder and hip, because there's a benefit to that. To maintain dollar hegemony is to maintain a world order where Britain and America are the dominant political factors and the dominant economic factors. And if the dollar is no longer the dominant currency, how can America fund her wars? How can she fund her multiple bases around the world? And how can she keep the civil strife and insurrection that is brewing and building at home at bay? Because there's not only a racial divide, there's a social divide, there's a cultural divide, there's a wealth and economic divide. All of these are recipes for an explosive civil war and insurrection. All of this. But no one seems to want to address this. And I tell you all the time that America's foreign policy mirrors her domestic policy, and her domestic policy mirrors her foreign policy. They are one and the same. Look how she justifies stepping on the neck of the little person and her police, vilifying a community of people, demonized by the media, and kept in that position economically. And when those people rise up, or they feel that they're receiving injustice and they're being overlooked, they rise up. Then the media beats them down with their image of them, and then America justifies the brutality against them, and then she moves to become the victim, even though she's the aggressor, and that's how she does in her international policy. Look at what she does. She goes over there and provokes China, sending people to Taiwan, even though she acknowledges that Taiwan is a part of China. What if China say, I'm gonna ignore the United States government, and from now on, I'm gonna start sending weapons over to part of California that want to secede from the state of California? How do you think that would go down with America? What if China sent their number 3 person, the head of the People's Council, to California, to that area that want to secede from California, or down to Texas, the area that want to secede completely from the United States? How do you think that would go down in the U.S. media, and how do you think that would go down with U.S. politicians? Oh, that's an affront to American sovereignty. We cannot allow this to happen, right? But yet, they're A-okay with provoking China. What about Russia? Ukraine and Russia, one and the same almost, right? America's plan was to take Ukraine from Russia so that she can weaken Russia and prevent Russia from reemerging as a rival, a strategic rival and power. That was her goal. That was her stated goal. Hell, Hillary Clinton herself said that it was unfair that Russia has so much vast territory and resources, and that they should balkanize Russia and take the resources. That's Hillary Clinton said that. I'm not saying it. Hillary Clinton said it. So they talk about democracy, and then they ignored the democratically elected president Viktor Yanukovych because he, at the last minute, accepted a deal with Putin. So they started killing people, right? And they started rising. They empowered. Listen to me good. They empowered Nazis to take over, and they put a Jewish face on it by putting the actor into the presidency, so that people would say, "Oh, they can't have Nazism over there, and it's a Jewish president over there." That's what they did, and they ignored the will of the people. Then they since 2014, even before that, they were in the eastern part of the western part of Ukraine, stoking tensions with their diplomatic corps, trying to cause a major political divide so that they can push through their plan. They didn't respect sovereignty there. They didn't respect the will of the people there. They didn't respect spheres of influence there. They didn't respect national law or international law there. They threw all of that out the window. And then when Russia fought back, they demonized Russia for protecting her own national interests. You see the reflection of what goes on in America? The victim becomes the aggressor, and the aggressor becomes the victim. It's real. And that's how her policy plays out. And you can only do this for so long before the world catches on. And when the world catches on, they will no longer tolerate it. And so you see a whole exodus of nations out of the dollar or the SWIFT system. You see an exodus of nations who are going to China Union Pay and the SIPS program by China, which is a rival to SWIFT. You see an exodus of nations out of the euro, the pound, and the dollar, and they're going to the Russian ruble and the mirror payments. And then Russia mirror is hooking up with Union Pay, which is a rival to Visa and MasterCard, and also a rival to all of America's globally uh, uh, entrenched financial institution. Union Pay is huge. Most people don't know that. And it's accepted in, I think, 180 countries or something like that. Union Pay. But China and Russia and these other nations, they built up these platforms like the AAIB and their own Asian infrastructure banks and the BRICS banks and all of these things that were a counter to the Western-dominated IMF and World Bank and all of these institutions that America and the West used to manipulate people and to force them to implement policies that are detrimental to the citizens of those nations and are detrimental to global economics to keep the Western world with an advantage. So you had Asian or the BRICS, that is Brazil, which is a Latin American nation, which also happens to be the nation with the largest population of Black people in the Western Hemisphere. I think 70% of the population of Brazil is Black, whether you know this or not. So Brazil, Russia, BR, India, I, China, C, and South Africa, S, the BRICS nations, right? They built up institutions outside of Western domination. And this is why America is enraged. This is why Britain and America continues to provoke the nations. This is why they continue to apply more sanctions. And then what's crazy about everything is this. Their policies are failing, and they are getting the brunt of what they intended for other people, and they're doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on proven failed policies. And as I often say about this statement that is often attributed to Einstein, where it says doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. She continues to try to impose her will by employing policies that have proven to be failures. And now you see that as Europe braces for a terrible winter, as Europe gets exposed as insolvent, as America suffers skyrocketing inflation, fuel shortages, food shortages. Look in the stores. Because guess what? The fertilizer that they use to grow the food in the fields in America come from Russia. Yeah, come from Russia. The stuff that they have on their shelves come from China. And you waging war, an economic, political, and geopolitical war with the nations that provide you with the sustenance that your people have to survive. If that is not insane political leadership, you tell me what that is. Because most people don't sit down and analyze this stuff. They go with the flow. Whatever is being reported in the news, they go with that. They don't take the time to analyze this stuff, to pierce through the fog and get to the other side so that you can see the light. They don't do that. But with this show, you'll get that. And I'm happy to bring it to you. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to give you this stuff. And let me comment on something real quick. All right. I'm in the chat too. I'm in the chat too. I respond. I look in the chat too. I thank you all for joining me. I'm not done yet, but I gotta just say a few things to you all to maybe direct your attention to what is really going on, because they are not doing it. And also remember right here to go to these platforms and sign up to our platforms there. Please do that, because other people sign up to what they believe in and what they like. You do the same thing. Show, because I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I love your program. I love this," but you don't put the muscle behind it. You don't go and show that you like it by doing what is necessary to show what you like. I'm not asking you if you don't want to sign up to Patreon, don't do it. But I'm just saying, go to the other platforms that are free and do it, so that we can continue to go and grow outside of this platform here, because I know for a fact I'm going to get suspended again. I already know it, because I have to tell the truth. Right? I have to do that about all of these issues. And I don't care if it alienates me from the in crowd or the so-called political class who all get together and you see them on each one of them platforms and doing this. Man, I don't care nothing about that. I don't care nothing about that, because I know what they tell me behind closed doors. I know what they tell me behind closed doors. I talk to them. They talk to me. They email me. They send me text messages, right? So I know what they think about this show. This is one of the most powerful platforms for truth anywhere, because we give it to you raw without a chaser. We give it to you straight, okay? And now, for those of you who are listening to the show, tell me where I've lied. Tell me where I have embellished anything or I've made up anything. Just show me one thing that I've lied about or embellished or made up. When I addressed Elizabeth, the African occupier, the Latin American occupier, the Caribbean occupier, the Asian occupier, when I addressed her, tell me where I lied at. See, they want to put all of this aura around her, but she was a beneficiary of bloodshed. The buck really stopped with her, not with the prime minister. Why do you think that when Liz Truss, who just became the prime minister right before she became prime minister, and she was voted to become prime minister by her peers, which she is dumb as a brick, with Liz Truss, the new British prime minister, is dumb as a brick. She didn't even know parts of Russia. She thought parts of Russia was part of Ukraine. In her meeting with Sergei Lavrov. I'm telling you, listen to me, I'm not making this stuff up. Google what I'm saying. But why do you think that she went to Scotland to meet with the Queen before she was approved to become officially approved to become the prime minister? Because the buck stops with the royal family over there. Regardless of what they say, the royal family doesn't get in politics. The MI6, the MI5, which are the intelligence agencies, the domestic and the foreign intelligence agencies, the British military, and all of the militaries of the Commonwealth and their police forces all swear allegiance and take an oath not to the Prime Minister of Britain, but to the Queen of England. So that's where the power is. So now, with Charles becoming the king, it now lies with him, and he becomes the largest landowner in the world. And again, I ask you, how in the hell did Queen Elizabeth get all this land? Because she didn't purchase it all. And if she didn't purchase it and it was somebody else's land and now it's hers, then she stole it. So with all that mystique and that air of benevolence, man, miss me with that foolishness. Let's call it like it is. She stole the land that she owns. So I know this will tell a lot of people, I really don't care. I ask you to prove me wrong. I ask you to show me where I'm wrong in my assessments. I'm not talking about you going on your feelings or what you think. I'm talking about disprove what I'm speaking about. Okay? Because, we can believe something, but a man with knowledge or a woman with knowledge can always defeat a person with just pure belief. Because I can believe it's an airplane out on my porch. That doesn't make it so. And I can believe that with my whole heart. But that does not make it so. But if I can point to you and prove to you that there's an airplane on my porch, then it becomes fact, right? And that's what we deal with here, facts. So overcome your emotions and listen to facts. The Western world is in decline. As a matter of fact, before we go off the air, I want to go to something real quick. Okay, so y'all bear with me for a second. This is from the Economic Collapse blog. Okay, so I'm going to read some of this to show where America now stands. And I also want to preface that with this. Do you know that there are more people, and there were more people for the last few years, that receive federal aid than there were when the United States economy collapsed and went into the Depression in the 1920s and 30s? You know that? But they mask that. They mask it by saying food stamps or aid or this, but it's all the same thing. It was help by the government. And from some people's figures, they say there's twice as many people in need today than it was during the Depression, with those long lines for miles for food. Right? I want to read something to you to show you just how dire the situation is. While America is investing money that she doesn't have into weapon systems to give to Ukraine and to arm these terrorists that are occupying Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Libya and all of North Africa, right? At home, her people can't afford heating, can't afford rent, can't afford mortgage, has to choose between paying a bill or eating, can't afford any of this. And it's getting worse by the day. And when you ask for debt relief, they turn a deaf ear, a blind eye, and a mute mouth to you. Oh, we can't do that. That'll push the deficit up. Yet they can always find money for the military industrial complex. 780 billion is not enough. We'll give you 800 billion. Do you know that they asked the president, this happened under Trump and it's happening under Biden. This is why I'm telling you, they're following the same path. That the Pentagon asked for a certain amount of money. The Congress refused to give them that amount of money because they demanded that they get more money for weapons and for war. While you have an explosion of homelessness in America, while you have your future leaders and engineers and professors burdened with college debt, no nation can survive when their future leaders have to think about how to remove debt from them instead of focusing on their craft and their profession. That is a recipe for the decline and fall of America. But because they're so arrogant and greedy and raucous about things, they ignore what is clear to most. So they can fund the military industrial complex, right? And look, the students out there protesting, we need debt relief. Biden throws them a pill. I'll give you a couple $1,000 debt relief. It didn't add up to much, right? Remember when Obama bailed out the same banks that got America into her financial crisis and gave them trillions of dollars. Trillions. Listen to me good. I'm not going to say billions. I say trillions. Then we have Trump, who did similarly. And then we had Biden, who gave you a couple of checks, right? Gave you a couple of checks, stimulus checks, which were what, 40, 50 billion dollars or 80 billion dollars or 100 billion dollars altogether. And then he was giving banks $300-400 billion relief, right? But the whole of the checks that Congress couldn't pass no more because it would just bloat the budget. The Republicans are adamantly against this. The Democrats are adamantly against it. We've got to keep spending in check. And then you go and get a military hundreds of billions of dollars more. Hundreds of billions. Now I want you to make this make sense. You say you're the world's leading and preeminent power, and you're decades ahead of everybody. then why do you need more money than you needed 5 years ago? Why do you need more money today than you needed yesterday if you're a decade ahead of any of your peer or rival? Right? This should be the time to cut back spending and use your spending in targeted ways to keep your military advantage. Huh? That's what a sound thinker would think. But we know there's no soundness in the politician or in the military circle. So when we look at America and how she throws you pennies and crumbs, and then at the same time, we have no money for that. The budget deficit and this and that, and then they go give Ukraine, they find $48 billion for Ukraine. Then they find 3 more billion. Then they find 7 more. Then they find 2 more billion. Then they find 800 million. Then they find 2 billion. Then they can find all of this stuff, tens of billions of dollars for a nation that most Americans don't even know where it's at. But they can't come up with an active program to eliminate homelessness. Do you know if they would have taken that $48 billion plus the other money that they've seeped into the Ukraine scenario, they could have eliminated and eradicated homelessness across America? Do you know if they would have taken that and added 10 billion with it, they could have eliminated the food crisis in America? But that's not what they want. What they want is people barely hanging on so that they can grovel at the feet of the government. What they want is to continue their rule where the elite stay elite, the rich stay rich, and the class divide has a barrier that you can't cross so that you can't make it out of the situation you are in into their level. That is the policy of America. That's the policy of the Western world. That's capitalism. That's capitalism at its finest. Because when America can't compete with a nation like China, she wages war, economic, technological, political war, right? Think about it. The sanctions are a form of political and economic war. And she does that to try to maintain or gain an advantage over a nation. So she does that, and she is bringing down, she's the Humpty Dumpty on the wall. And she doesn't even realize that she's swinging her feet at the edge of the wall, and she continues to build up momentum. Sooner or later, because she's top heavy, she's going to flip off the wall. And when Humpty Dumpty falls off that wall, all of her men will not be able to put this empire back together again. And this is a reality that they can't take. So listen, on the Economic Collapse blog, there's an article called "Food Banks All Over the U.S. Are Overwhelmed as the Cost of Living Pushes More People into Poverty," by Michael Snyder. He says, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to read some of it. "The food lines are back, and they are starting to get really long, but this wasn't supposed to happen. We are being told that unemployment is very low, even though that is not actually true. And we are also being told that the inflation rate is still only in single digits. And of course, that is not exactly true either. All over the country, middle class Americans, see, they don't talk about the poor. Middle class Americans are watching their lifestyles be absolutely eviscerated by the cost of living crisis, and an increasing number of them are turning to food banks. So we are seeing very long lines at food banks in major cities from coast to coast. And we are also seeing very long lines in rural locations such as Northwest Montana. Stop right there. This morning I got an alert on my phone, and it was a news alert. And it was saying the new customers to Dollar General, right? And I'm paraphrasing it. And it talks about new Dollar General has a new breed of customers. And these are people who are now forced to go to Dollar General and they make $100,000 or more because of the situation economically. I got it, and I think I saved it, or I might have emailed it to myself for later to read over it. Okay. Now, Also, I want you to put in mind that multiple, I wouldn't say multiple, I would say a huge portion of America's farmers are killing their cattle and selling their farms or going belly up bankrupt on their farms. Now, all of this is going on where America continues to have skyrocketing debt, inflation shooting through the roof, massive unemployment, a great social divide, a great cultural divide, alienating nations around the world, prosecuting and promoting wars and destabilization across the globe, right? Isn't that a recipe for war at home and war abroad? I mean, you don't have to be a scientist to know this. You don't have to be a geopolitical strategist to recognize that. But let's go further. Across the flathead, food pantries are facing emptier shelves and scarcer donations as demands for their services grow. Our numbers have definitely been increasing. Ann Balmer's co-manager of the Columbia Falls Food Bank said, there's been an influx of people and a shortage of supplies. The Columbia Falls Food Bank is now overwhelmed by the level of demand that it is experiencing, and unfortunately, the same thing can be said for countless other food banks across the nation. The problem of overwhelmed and understocked food banks is not unique to Northwest Montana. Food and gas prices are skyrocketing across the country, forcing Americans to pinch pennies and limit purchases. As of last month, grocery store prices were up 10.8% from the same time last year, while supermarket tabs are getting higher. Lines at food pantries are getting longer as Americans struggle to put meals on the table. You should never, ever look down on those that need to use local food banks. Stop right there. Do you see how things are changing? The same people who never thought that they would be in those positions are now telling, don't look down on me, when they look down on the people beforehand. And they read, oh, those people are lazy. Those people don't want a job. They don't want to work. And now the people who said those things are getting into the position of Lazarus. I'm not, excuse me, not Lazarus, but they're becoming the beggar. They're in a position where now they have fallen off the perch of goodness because they thought that they had a good career, and they thought because they had been in a company for 20 or 30 years, and now they get their marching orders and their pink slip, and now they're put in a position of the poor man and the poor woman. And they're telling you not to, I have dignity. I want to work. I want to do this. Don't look down on me. But you look down on the people who were trying to work and who wanted a better life. They just could not have access to that better life. This is what I'm saying. When urban America does something, the negative connotations behind it because of the way they present stuff in the media. And then when middle America and upper America start suffering the pains, the economic pains of what urban America suffers, then they want you to be compassionate and understanding towards them. When listen to me good, this is something I want to point out. Black America has been pointing out the injustices in the unjust justice system and the unjust political system since they were able to do it when they were freed from slavery. Most white America thought that the black people were being ingrates. But now they are in a position too now to see that the system is working. The system now is eating itself up. And they are being food for the system. And now they are rising up, and they too are now screaming about the unjust system and the corruption of the political system and doing this and doing that, right? That's what they're doing. And they want you to sympathize and have empathy for them. But you ignored people who suffered under this whole thing. But you want empathy and sympathy because now you're in this position. See, I call this stuff out because they don't. This such and such. Trump was this and Biden did this and this. Yeah, okay. But we've been telling you this for years. But now only that you're in the position to feel it, are you now understanding because it's affecting you directly now. It's affecting you directly now. things are going to get way worse than what you expect because the situation is becoming more dire by the day. And this is pushing these insane leaders to put unsound and unstable policies in play. And it is pushing the empire towards collapse. We're watching this. We're living in the end of American empire. We're living in the end of the American Republic. Because now you got these people on this side want to go here. They want to secede. They want to do this. They want to pattern after their thoughts and what they think is best. They no longer want to accept this and want to accept that. Right? And there's a great divide. And the gulf is only growing in all aspects. All aspects. This is what I tell you when you refer back to the Bible, when it says, as thou hast done, so shall it be done unto thee. See, for centuries, Europe and America broke up governments around the world. They stole wealth. They kept it in a certain class. They broke up republics and nations. They waged war. They used food and energy and other things as weapons against these nations. And this literally destroyed institutions in these nations and forced an influx of refugees to go to Europe and go to America. Now, for a while, they thought they had got away with it. And they thought that they were invulnerable and they were not subject to the very laws of nature, that what goes around comes around. Or any action will receive a equal or greater reaction. That's science. America thought that, and Europe thought that they were the exception to the rules. That's why when you hear them talk, they say, this is happening on the continent of Europe. This is not right. This is just horrendous. Oh, but it's okay to happen on the continent of Africa. It was okay to happen in the Caribbean or in Latin America, and it was okay to take place in Asia, but to happen in Europe is unconscionable, right? Huh? You see the racism in that? You see the Eurocentric mind in that? Do you see the arrogance in that and that exceptionalism in their thought? And it comes out. See, when this stuff comes out of your mouth, it's because it's been in your brain. It didn't come out your mouth because it was hiding in your eye. It came out because it was in the recesses of your brain. And this is what you thought and felt. And this is what we're seeing on a major level today. Right? And so they're reaping what they have sown. They did these sanctions thinking they was going to break, and they bragged about it. And I want you to hear this because this is crazy. And I know we're going to close shortly, but check this out. So they sanctioned, we're going to go and we're going to sanction Russia, and we're going to break her economy, and we're going to make sure that the Russians suffer. And then when it backfires, Vladimir Putin and Russia are using their energy resources as weapons against us. Well, you use sanctions. What the hell you think sanctions are? Those are economic weapons. So in your mind, you can rationalize trying to overthrow a government by sanctioning them and cutting off trade with them, but for them to retaliate, it's unconscionable. This is what I'm saying. This is in their thoughts all the time, that they are exceptional and that you are not supposed to do that to them. Only they can do it to you. I just want you all just to sit back sometime and just listen to them talk. Just listen to them. And listen to the verbiage. Listen to the lingo. And they'll talk over the average person to their colleagues. And they'll show their colleagues how much contempt they have for the average person. And the average person sit there, yeah, did you hear Joe Biden speak? Oh, he was magnificent. Did you hear his press secretary? Did you hear Trump speak? Oh, he's for the people. All of that is garbage. All of them are for themselves. And therefore, the people who bag them. the people who allow them to maintain their wealth and their position. That's who they're for, not for you. And we see that in the policies that they implemented and are implementing, which are helping to bring down the fall of America. Now, on that note, listen, I'm gonna go out to